today's episode, we explore how a father abandoned his son to die on Everest. This father-son expedition to Mount Everest became a test that went far beyond physical endurance. What began as the ultimate bonding adventure would force an impossible choice that no parent should ever have to make. It was May 18, 2015, and the pre-dawn darkness at 27,800 feet on Mount Everest's northeast ridge carried the crystalline stillness that signals optimal summit conditions. The temperature held steady at minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit, with moderate winds gusting to 15 miles per hour, while the sky remained clear with excellent visibility extending across the entire Himalayan range. Gregory Kane, a 52-year-old construction foreman from Oregon, had built his reputation managing complex commercial projects that required precise coordination and unwavering determination to meet deadlines regardless of obstacles. His climbing experience included 2 successful ascents of Mount Rainier and 1 summit of Mount Whitney, representing the extent of his high-altitude mountaineering background before committing to the Everest expedition. His decision to attempt Everest represented the culmination of a 5-year savings plan that had required significant financial sacrifice, accumulating the substantial funds necessary for the commercial expedition that he viewed as his final opportunity for a major mountaineering achievement before age would make such attempts impossible, understanding that his physical capabilities would decline significantly over the next decade. Jordan Kane, 24, had recently graduated with a degree in exercise science and worked part-time at a climbing gym while pursuing certification as a personal trainer. His climbing background included several rock roads throughout the Pacific Northwest, though his experience remained largely limited to single-pitch climbs and a few multi-pitch attempts where he had struggled with exposure and route finding on more technical sections. His high-altitude experience was minimal, consisting only of Mount Shasta and Mount Adams, neither of which exceeded 14,500 feet elevation. His motivation for the Everest expedition centered on proving his climbing abilities while bonding with his father through shared adversity, believing that his youth, fitness level, and theoretical knowledge of altitude physiology would prepare him for the extreme altitude demands of the world's highest peak. Their combined mountaineering experience totaled less than 8 years, with neither father nor son having attempted peaks above 14,500 feet or experienced the severe physiological stress that occurs above 20,000 feet elevation. Both men had completed a basic mountaineering course and hired experienced Sherpa guides through a commercial expedition company that specialized in guiding clients with limited high-altitude experience. The Everest expedition represented the biggest physical and financial challenge either man had ever attempted, requiring Gregory to exhaust his savings, while Jordan postponed graduate school plans to participate in what they viewed as a once-in-a-lifetime father-son adventure. With their 8 months of physical training focused on cardiovascular conditioning and strength building, but lacking the gradual altitude acclimatization that experienced high-altitude climbers consider essential for Everest attempts. Mount Everest's northeast ridge route presents climbers with a technically demanding approach that includes the notorious second step, a 40-foot vertical rock wall at 28,300 feet that requires technical climbing skills while wearing bulky high-altitude gear and breathing supplemental oxygen. At 27,800 feet elevation, atmospheric pressure drops to approximately 1/3 of sea level values, reducing available oxygen to levels that cannot sustain human life for extended periods, even with supplemental oxygen systems. The death zone above 26,000 feet allows only hours of survival, time before the human body begins shutting down vital organ systems due to oxygen starvation. Weather conditions on Everest can change within hours, transforming clear summit conditions into life-threatening storms with wind speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour and temperatures dropping below minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The jet stream, which typically flows directly over Everest's summit, occasionally shifts position to create brief weather windows when summit attempts become possible, but these windows rarely last more than 12 to 24 hours before conditions deteriorate beyond survivable limits. Rescue operations above 26,000 feet remain virtually impossible due to helicopter altitude limitations and the extreme risks to rescue personnel in the death zone environment. Weather reports issued by expedition meteorologists on the morning of May 18th had identified a narrow weather window with stable conditions expected until mid-afternoon, followed by the arrival of a significant storm system that would bring sustained winds exceeding 70 miles per hour and heavy snowfall to the summit region. The forecast specifically warned that climbers needed to complete their summit attempts and begin descent by early afternoon to avoid being caught in deteriorating conditions that would make safe descent impossible. Multiple expedition leaders had adjusted their summit timing based on these forecasts. Most teams planning to reach the summit by midday and begin immediate descent. Mountain weather stations throughout the Himalayas had recorded unusual atmospheric patterns that suggested rapid weather deterioration. Once the storm system arrived, with wind speeds potentially exceeding predicted values and temperatures dropping more rapidly than normal seasonal patterns, the forecast included explicit warnings about rapidly changing visibility conditions, as blowing snow would create whiteout conditions above tree line, with visibility potentially dropping to zero during peak wind periods. These conditions had prompted several expedition teams to postpone their summit attempts until more favorable weather patterns developed. Gregory and Jordan had departed from their high camp at 26,500 feet at midnight, following the standard timeline for summit attempts that would position them at the summit during the optimal weather window. Their Sherpa guide, Pemba Norbu, had over 15 years of Everest guiding experience and had successfully guided more than 40 clients to the summit while maintaining an exemplary safety record. Norbu had briefed both men extensively on the importance of maintaining the planned timeline and turning back immediately if either climber showed signs of altitude sickness, emphasizing that no summit was worth risking lives. However, Jordan began displaying early symptoms of altitude sickness around dawn, starting with a persistent headache and mild nausea that initially seemed manageable but indicated the early onset of high-altitude cerebral edema. These symptoms, while common at extreme altitude, represented warning signs that required immediate attention and potential descent to prevent progression to life-threatening brain swelling. As they climbed higher, Jordan's condition worsened noticeably, with his speech becoming slurred and his coordination beginning to fail on technical sections that required precise footwork and balance. Norbu observed Jordan's deteriorating condition and recommended turning back during the morning hours, understanding that continued ascent would likely result in complete physical collapse and potentially fatal cerebral edema. Gregory insisted they continue climbing despite Norbu's professional recommendation and Jordan's obvious distress, stating that they had invested too much time and money to turn back when the summit remained within reach. His decision reflected the phenomenon known as summit fever, where climbers become so focused on reaching their objective that they ignore clear safety warnings and rational risk assessment. Gregory's construction background had conditioned him to push through obstacles and complete projects regardless of complications, but this mindset proved dangerous in an environment where retreat often represents the only safe option. His financial investment in the expedition had created additional pressure to succeed, as the substantial cost represented his entire savings, and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that could not be repeated if they turned back. This economic pressure, combined with proximity to the summit, created a psychological dynamic that overrode his paternal instincts and rational risk assessment. By late morning, Jordan's headache had worsened significantly, and he began showing signs of confusion, while by midday he was stumbling frequently and displaying clear signs of severe cerebral edema, including loss of coordination, slurred speech, and periods of confusion that indicated dangerous brain swelling. His movements became increasingly erratic as he struggled to maintain balance on the narrow ridge, requiring assistance from both Gregory and Norbu to navigate technical sections safely. Jordan's speech had become noticeably impaired, with simple sentences requiring significant effort and often containing confused or inappropriate content that demonstrated impaired cognitive function. The physical signs of Jordan's deteriorating condition included stumbling on terrain that should have presented no difficulty for a competent climber, difficulty maintaining his grip on fixed ropes, and episodes where he appeared unaware of his surroundings or the dangers of his situation. His face showed the characteristic signs of cerebral edema, including facial swelling and a glassy-eyed expression that indicated reduced consciousness and impaired brain function. These symptoms represented clear medical evidence that Jordan's brain was swelling due to oxygen deprivation, a condition that would prove fatal without immediate descent. Norbu made multiple radio calls to base camp requesting guidance and reporting Jordan's deteriorating condition, while base camp controllers warned of accelerating weather deterioration that would make descent increasingly dangerous with each passing hour. The radio communications documented the progression of Jordan's symptoms and Norbu's growing concern about continuing the ascent, providing evidence of the professional warnings that Gregory chose to ignore in his determination to reach the summit. Base camp personnel, monitoring weather conditions and the team's progress, advised immediate descent based on both the medical emergency developing with Jordan and the approaching storm system that threatened all climbers on the upper mountain. These radio transmissions were recorded by expedition communication systems, providing later evidence of the multiple warnings that Gregory received about the dangers of continuing upward, with a climber showing signs of severe altitude sickness. The combination of Jordan's medical emergency and approaching storm conditions created a situation where immediate descent represented their only chance for survival. Jordan's symptoms had progressed beyond mild altitude sickness to severe cerebral edema, evidenced by his inability to walk in a straight line, difficulty forming coherent sentences, and episodes of disorientation where he appeared unaware of his surroundings. The physical signs of brain swelling were becoming unmistakable as Jordan's condition continued deteriorating with each step higher, while the approaching weather system promised to trap them in conditions that would prove fatal even for healthy climbers. Jordan collapsed completely in the early afternoon, unable to continue under his own power and displaying symptoms of severe, high-altitude cerebral edema that included loss of consciousness, irregular breathing, and complete loss of motor coordination. His condition had progressed beyond the point where supplemental oxygen could provide meaningful improvement, requiring immediate descent to lower altitude as the only treatment capable of preventing fatal brain damage. The collapse occurred suddenly, with Jordan losing consciousness while attempting to climb a technical section, requiring Norbu and Gregory to prevent him from falling off the narrow ridge. Norbu assessed Jordan's condition and determined that evacuation would require the combined efforts of both Gregory and himself to move Jordan's dead weight down the technical sections of the descent route. The unconscious climber's breathing had become irregular and shallow, indicating that his brain was no longer functioning properly due to swelling and oxygen deprivation. Jordan's pupils were dilated and unresponsive to light, a neurological sign that indicated severe brain injury and imminent death without immediate medical intervention that was impossible at that altitude. With Jordan unconscious and the weather window rapidly closing, Gregory faced a critical decision that would determine the outcome for all three climbers. The summit lay only 400 vertical feet above their position, representing less than 2 hours of climbing under normal conditions, while Jordan's condition required immediate evacuation that would prevent any possibility of reaching the summit. Norbu explained that carrying Jordan down would require both men's full attention and strength, making it impossible for Gregory to continue to the summit and return in time to assist with the evacuation. The weather conditions were beginning to deteriorate noticeably, with wind speeds increasing and the first wisps of cloud beginning to obscure the summit ridge. Visibility remained good, but the approaching storm front was visible as a wall of dark clouds moving rapidly toward the mountain from the west. Temperature readings had begun dropping more rapidly than predicted, while barometric pressure changes indicated that the storm system was accelerating beyond the meteorologist's original timeline. Gregory made the decision to continue to the summit alone, instructing Norbu to wait with Jordan while he completed the final approach to Everest's summit. Gregory reasoned that reaching the summit quickly and returning would be faster than attempting to move Jordan immediately, and that the weather window might close completely if they delayed further. His choice reflected the belief that completing the summit would allow him to return with renewed energy to assist in Jordan's evacuation, though this reasoning failed to account for the rapid progression of high-altitude cerebral edema. If you're enjoying this story, please hit subscribe to support more of these important investigations. This created an immediate moral and logistical crisis that would define the remainder of the expedition. With Jordan's life hanging in the balance and weather conditions rapidly deteriorating, Gregory's choice to prioritize the summit over immediate evacuation violated every principle of mountaineering safety and family loyalty. Norbu found himself caught between his professional obligation to follow his client's instructions and his ethical duty to prioritize the medical emergency, while Jordan lay unconscious and unaware that his father had chosen personal achievement over his survival. He reached the summit in mid-afternoon, spending 15 minutes at Everest's 29,032-foot peak before beginning his descent. The camera's GPS function documented his exact position and timing at the summit, while satellite phone records showed communication activity during his time there. GPS timestamps on summit photographs and electronic device logs established a timeline showing the 15-minute duration of his summit stay, while Jordan's condition continued deteriorating at the medical emergency site below. Meanwhile, Jordan's high-altitude cerebral edema progressed to severe brain swelling that caused irregular breathing patterns and loss of basic reflexes, indicating that permanent brain damage was occurring due to oxygen starvation and increased intracranial pressure. Norbu attempted to begin descent without Gregory's assistance, but Jordan's dead weight made movement impossible on the steep, technical terrain that required precise footwork and balance. The Sherpa guide's attempts to drag Jordan down the mountain resulted in minimal progress, while exhausting his own energy reserves and compromising his ability to assist in the evacuation. The terrain at 27,800 feet consists of steep, exposed rock and ice that requires technical climbing skills, even under optimal conditions. Moving an unconscious person across this terrain demanded strength and coordination that exceeded what a single person could provide, particularly at altitude where physical performance was already severely compromised. Norbu's attempts to create an improvised rescue system using their climbing ropes proved futile due to the lack of secure anchor points and the technical complexity of the terrain. By the time Gregory returned from the summit, Jordan had been unconscious for several hours and was showing signs of severe brain swelling that included fixed, dilated pupils and irregular breathing patterns that indicated imminent death from cerebral edema. The approaching storm had accelerated beyond the meteorologist's predictions, with visibility dropping rapidly as wind speeds increased dramatically and snow began falling heavily across the upper mountain. The temperature had dropped significantly below the morning readings, while gusting winds made standing upright increasingly difficult on the exposed ridge. Wind speeds increased from moderate to dangerous levels, creating ground blizzard conditions that reduced visibility to a few feet and made navigation extremely difficult even for experienced climbers. Gregory and Norbu attempted to drag Jordan down the mountain using a rope system that distributed his weight between both men, but his unconscious body proved impossible to maneuver safely on the steep, icy terrain that required technical climbing skills and precise movement. Their progress averaged minimal distance per hour, a pace that would require many hours to reach safety while the storm continued intensifying around them. The physical demands of moving Jordan's dead weight quickly exhausted both men's energy reserves, while the extreme cold and wind began affecting their own coordination and decision-making abilities. The rescue attempt involved creating an improvised sledge system using their climbing packs and rope, but the technical terrain made this approach impossible as Jordan's body weight could not be controlled on the steep sections. Both men were forced to support Jordan's full weight while maintaining their own balance on icy, exposed terrain where a single mistake would result in a fatal fall for all three climbers. As evening approached, with the storm fully developed and their own survival in jeopardy, Gregory made the decision to abandon Jordan and descend alone to save his own life. Wind speeds had increased to dangerous levels, with temperatures dropping well below survivable limits, creating conditions that would prove fatal within hours for anyone remaining exposed at that elevation. The storm had transformed the mountain environment into a survival scenario where continued rescue efforts would likely result in additional deaths without improving Jordan's chances of survival, which had already become zero due to the severity of his brain injury. Gregory's decision reflected the brutal calculus of high-altitude survival, where emotional attachments and family relationships must be weighed against physiological realities that cannot be overcome through determination or love. The mathematical relationship between heat loss and heat production in the storm conditions made survival impossible for anyone remaining at that elevation, while Jordan's medical condition had progressed beyond any possibility of recovery, even with immediate helicopter evacuation. Norbu refused to abandon Jordan, despite the hopeless nature of the situation, choosing to remain with the unconscious climber rather than descend to safety. The Sherpa guide's professional ethics and personal code prevented him from leaving a client, even when that choice meant certain death. Norbu's sacrifice demonstrated the loyalty and dedication that characterizes the Sherpa climbing community, where guides routinely risk their lives to protect foreign climbers who have hired their services, often at great personal cost to their own families and communities. Gregory descended alone through the storm, using fixed ropes and his remaining energy reserves to reach the relative safety of a lower camp by late evening. His descent required hours of technical climbing in extreme conditions, during which he suffered frostbite to his fingers and toes while fighting exhaustion and hypothermia. The storm continued throughout the night, with wind speeds reaching dangerous levels and temperatures dropping to life-threatening levels, creating conditions that would prove fatal for anyone remaining exposed above 27,000 feet. Gregory's survival during the descent represented a combination of his remaining physical reserves, high-quality equipment, and the fixed rope systems that provided navigation references in the whiteout conditions. Gregory reached base camp the following morning and reported Jordan and Norbu missing to expedition leaders, who immediately began organizing rescue efforts despite the continuing storm conditions. Weather prevented any rescue attempts for several days, as helicopter operations remained impossible due to extreme winds and zero visibility that made ground rescue attempts suicidal for potential rescuers. The delay in rescue operations, while frustrating for Gregory and the expedition team, reflected standard protocols designed to prevent additional casualties among rescue personnel who had faced the same deadly conditions that had claimed Jordan and Norbu. When weather conditions finally cleared, a search team composed of experienced Sherpa climbers located both bodies at high altitude, approximately 200 feet below where Gregory had abandoned them. The bodies' positions indicated that Norbu had continued attempting to move Jordan down the mountain for hours after Gregory's departure, achieving minimal progress before succumbing to exhaustion and exposure. Jordan was found face down in the snow, having died from severe brain swelling caused by high-altitude cerebral edema, while Norbu was discovered nearby, having died from hypothermia and exposure after exhausting his energy reserves in a futile attempt to save Jordan's life. The scene investigation revealed evidence of Norbu's continued rescue efforts, including improvised rope systems and drag marks in the snow that showed the Sherpa guide had attempted to move Jordan long after Gregory's departure. The investigation team recovered Gregory's camera and satellite phone, which contained GPS data documenting his 15-minute summit stay and communication records from the crisis. Radio transcripts from base camp provided evidence of the multiple warnings Gregory had received about Jordan's medical condition and the approaching weather emergency. The electronic evidence demonstrated that Gregory had prioritized his summit goal over his son's medical emergency, while the timeline showed that earlier descent could have prevented Jordan's death, as high-altitude cerebral edema responds effectively to immediate descent when treatment begins before severe brain swelling occurs. The coroner's report ruled Jordan's death accidental, but noted that earlier descent could have prevented the fatal outcome, as high-altitude cerebral edema responds effectively to immediate descent when treatment begins before severe brain swelling occurs. Jordan died from high-altitude cerebral edema, complicated by prolonged exposure to extreme conditions, while Norbu died from hypothermia and exposure after exhausting his energy reserves, attempting to save Jordan's life. Gregory returned to Oregon facing the financial aftermath of the expedition and subsequent legal proceedings. The construction projects that had once funded his climbing ambitions now served merely to pay mounting attorney fees, while the climbing gear that filled his garage remained untouched reminders of dreams that had turned to tragedy. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.